When service members return home from war, they may feel isolated, disconnected, or misunderstood. They may also miss the bonds that were formed during their deployments, and they may be burdened by the death and destruction that they witnessed. For these reasons, Sebastian Junger, famed journalist and author, recommends and urges communities to take the time to listen to the experiences of both service members and veterans, much like tribal cultures did with their warriors. By listening to their experiences, we can begin to start to understand the sacrifices that they made and to begin to close the gap that exists between veterans and non-veterans, and possibly lighten some of their burdens. According to Mr. Junger, active listening without judgment or interruption is one of the greatest gifts that we could give to our warriors. I'd like to introduce our first guest, Chuck Vieira. Hi, Chuck.
Nathan, thank you for having me here. And for the people out there, the reason I came here will become apparent toward the end. I want other servicemen to know my story, so hopefully it will help them. Nathan, I know you and I have talked before. I was hoping you had some questions for me to answer.
Yes, to start with, could you just give us a description of yourself and your military experiences?
Well, I'm 68 years old now. I was in the military for 3 years, even though it's going to say retired. I'm retired from my work. I was in medical sales most of my life. I also owned a couple of companies through the years, and married once, have 3 boys who actually are very tight. And at this age, they actually think I'm disabled and can't do anything, so it's nice if I need something done, I just call them up and ask for a tool, and they come and do it. Now, my service time was an interesting time in my life. I served for 3 years during the Vietnam War. Did not want to go, just so you'll know, but just couldn't go to Canada.
Yep.
So my draft number was very low, so I knew I was being drafted, and I volunteered to go into aviation. I ended up being a crew chief with an MOS of 67N20. My first day in Vietnam, and forgive me in this, is, oh crap, I'm here. Got drunk as a skunk the first night, by the way. Had KP the second day, threw up everywhere, so they let me sleep the rest of the day. Within a month, I was a crew chief on a Huey helicopter, flying different missions. One of my first missions was in a firefight. They loaded a wounded soldier on board. I had to hold his arm, and as they pulled him out of the helicopter, you know, his arm was just dangling, and that got me to realize that Vietnam is not going to be an easy walk. Within about maybe 3 months, maybe you're 18 years old and stupid. I didn't want to do KP, so I volunteered for the Light Scouts. And what that was, you flew in a Loach at very low level, and if you came up against a 4-foot rice paddy, we had to go over it. So I did that for quite a while, for the last, probably maybe 8-9 months, because the last couple of months I didn't fly. But we flew 7 days a week, sometimes in the rain, 3 to 5 missions a day, and every day, probably at least 1 or 2 of those missions, I was in a very close firefight as the enemy, like I say, 3 to 5 feet above the ground. My last crash, I had a few of them, we've discussed that before, was actually inside an enemy base camp. I had a pilot do a stupid move. He actually was hovering the helicopter, and they came up and shot us down. And actually, when I ran out of ammo, I was down to my 6-shooter. I had 1 bullet left. And I know torture was coming if they captured us, so my thought was suicide or let them capture me. And I think I would have shot myself, to be frank. Yeah. However, at that time, an NVA soldier popped up. I shot him, took his AK-47, and got the other 2 pilots into the Cobra. And we actually flew out of there. The Cobra came down. We threw out the ammo pods, and the 3 of us got in the ammo bay of a Cobra, which is, I think it's 36 inches wide, and off we flew to a fire base. That's my Vietnam experience. After that, I refused to fly, told them to send me to jail, I'm not flying anymore. And they promoted me to sergeant and put me in charge of the unit.
Yeah, that sounds like a harrowing experience.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing at the time. And you're 18, and you don't realize, you know, how tough it can be.
I didn't realize you were that young
Oh,
at
yeah.
that time. Okay.
18.
Yeah. So when we say burns of war, I could guess what might come to mind for you, but I'll ask.
I think for me, the burdens of war probably was the last time I was shot down.
Yep.
Inside the enemy base camp. Should have never been shot down. Mistake of another gentleman. The mistake of the pilot. He shouldn't have hovered. He was kind of showing off to an Air Force pilot at the time who was flying as my replacement of my gunner. Yep. So in that regard, you can hear the enemy. Usually before, if I was in a firefight with them, I didn't hear them because I had my helmet on. But now you're on the ground. You're an infantry type person. You can hear them. You can hear explosions. And it's just like you see on TV. The bullets come bipping by you as you're standing there. And really thought I was not going to make it out of there. So that would be with the probably, as you're saying, the harrowing experience that I had.
Well, I feel my heart racing just listening to you. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to talk today about is struggles that you've had, either during deployment or after coming home from deployment.
After deployment in Vietnam, I actually went to, it was Fort Knox, and I actually was the sergeant in charge of the depot maintenance hangar for the aviation unit there. I left out of there when I got out of the Army, and I always had very successful jobs in terms of that. But the difference prior to my service, I was an easygoing, relaxed person, rarely had to raise my voice. After the service, very verbose, always thought I was right and voiced it. I'm sure that cost me my marriage. Just not listening, unable to communicate, maybe that's a good way to say it. I know it cost me a couple of jobs when you're yelling at the president of your company. It doesn't go far.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think, and then it's all of a sudden you say, oh, something's not right. I never recognized it as PTSD as we look at it today. Yep. It was my normal life, and it hasn't progressed. So in that regard, I just never recognized it.
And do you understand the relationship between your experiences and those behaviors, thinking that you're always right? I'm not sure if...
I think I understand your question,
yeah.
Nathan. I understand it now.
Okay.
I had no clue back then. I just thought everybody else other than myself was a jerk. What's wrong with this person? Can't he see the alphabet in front of his face?
Yep.
And that's how I went through.
Okay. And I wish we had more time to delve into that even more. But the other thing I want to make sure that we save time for is for you to talk to other veterans who might be struggling, or service members or veterans who might be struggling, and particularly those who might be feeling a little bit desperate. Do you have any message for them or recommendations for them?
I think when you're really looking at your life after your post-service, if you felt you had a personality change, or listen to your close spouses. Like my spouse at the time tried to talk to me. I never really listened. I just presumed she was wrong. Recognize you have an issue now, or seek help right away. Don't wait. Vietnam was 50 years ago, and I only waited until last year to seek help. And I wish I had sought the help a lot sooner. And that's probably what I would say to anybody listening to this from my experiences.
And so in the last year, so you've sought help, and how did that work? What changes have you noticed?
I don't know if I've noticed a lot of changes.
Okay.
However, what's happened is it's made me more conscious that I have an issue.
Yeah.
And with this issue now, I know I have, and I've always had a lot of trouble sleeping after the service. I always have. Yeah. I don't remember my dreams. I never have. I don't know if I remembered them prior to my service. However, I just don't know. And what I'm hoping is I go forward just to try to, well, first sleep better, because I know I don't sleep well still. And just, I don't have feelings of aggravation that I had a long time ago. I very seldom yell at people now. I'm not sure why that happens.
Oh, okay.
I think it might have been part of some of the discussions we've had, as you've had me search deeper into what's happening to me. And I'm hoping going forward that as I get more therapy, I believe the therapy has helped, even after all of this time, to try to bring out maybe who I was before. I'm just not sure where to go on that.
Yeah, yeah. But that's a nice change, though, that you're not yelling as much at
Yes,
people. Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm sure for you and for
Yeah.
your loved ones and friends.
My children will tell you, since they're more computer-oriented, that there was a Chuck version 1 and a Chuck version 2, and I'm in now Chuck version 2.
And when did that start?
Probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Okay. And any thoughts about what made that change, that shift?
Yeah, it was after my divorce, moving to Florida, a lot of good friends and good scotch. That's what made that change. And it's just, you don't want to go through life being a jerk.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's encouraging for people who may be struggling.
Right.
Yeah.
Good scotch.
Great.
Forgive me.
And is there anything else that you want to share? We have a couple minutes left. Anything else about your experiences? Anything else that comes to your mind about burdens of war?
Well, I have one great funny story about Vietnam. We truly flew low level, but I knew the helicopters we had would do what was called a cyclic climb, and they could pop over a 50-foot tree. And we were flying one day, all rice paddies, nothing around, going over rice paddies, twisting and turning, and you could never go straight. And all of a sudden, and the pilot that day had asked me to sit in the front seat instead of the back, and all of a sudden the pilot straightened out, leaned forward, and we were going full crank, probably about 130, 140 miles an hour, aimed right at this tree, a 100-foot tree. Now, I knew he can go over it. I just presumed he had me in the front seat and wanted to scare me. So we're flying along, and I'm just watching the tree come closer. I never told him that the tree was there because I presumed he saw it.
Right.
He hit the tree. We hit the tree, the blades go flying just like you see it on TV. We rolled into rice paddies, and rice paddies, not the best thing to be in. It does give you a little bit of a tainted smell afterwards. And we got up, and he was mad at me because I didn't tell him about the tree. And I was mad at him because he didn't see the tree. So no one got hurt. The gunner in the back got out. He was sputtering also, but that's some of the funny stuff that happens in war,
You would think he would have seen the tree since he was the pilot.
He just said he focused, and it was just interesting how to do that,
Yeah.
I don't remember the pilot's name. I probably wouldn't say it anyway, but
Yeah.
it was one of those funny things. The other thing is, if you can do KP or fly in combat, do the KP. That's maybe what I should have done.
Okay.
No. And then the service itself afterwards, I don't think I had many troubles. As a sergeant, you pretty much, it was a lieutenant and myself who ran the base at Fort Knox. So it was a pretty nice duty, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we got out of that. And I treated the guys pretty well. I only had a couple of strange ducks maybe, but it was a good time. Yeah. My life overall I can't complain about because there's no need to go backwards, but like I say, my only thing, if you could look back, is I wish I'd taken some stock advice from an uncle one time, was Apple. And the second one is I wish I had recognized that I had an issue, a PTSD issue as we look at it today, way back when.
So the final question then is, what are the signs that maybe that you didn't recognize?
My signs were I became a loud, verbose person, always thought I was right.
Yep.
Couldn't believe that if somebody tried to tell me I was wrong, it was my way or the highway kind of thing. You hear that a lot. And that's what I had turned into after my service, and never knew it.
Okay. All right.
That would be probably the thing I would bring forward.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
All right.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have with me today Ken Garthee. Welcome,
Hi.
Ken.
Thank you.
Do you want to give a description of yourself and your military experiences?
Description of myself. I have a terrific wife of 48 years. We have 2 sons. We have 4 grandchildren, which I'm very proud of, 2 girls, 2 boys. They live local, so I get to see them often.
Oh, that's great.
And spoil them, like every grandparent does.
Yep.
My military experience was when we graduated from high school. I wanted a job where nobody would tell me what to do, so I joined the Marine Corps.
Good thinking.
And that worked out really well for me.
Yeah.
I always start out with my presentations with that joke, because everybody reacts and responds the same.
Yeah.
I was 19 years old when I was in country in January of 1966. I was an infantry group for 4 or 5 months, and then they were looking for people who knew how to read map and compass. And since I had been a Boy Scout, I had learned map and compass, and I was assigned to a Scout recon unit, and I loved that. The guys were all like brothers. I mean, we could look at each other, we know what we were all thinking, because we were all trained to do one thing, and that is protect the other Marines, lead the Marines on missions and patrols, and then bring back information and intelligence so that other units would have the same information. We landed in Da Nang in January, and we walked up to the DMZ, and we were the first Marine Corps unit in November of 1966 to be there.
Wow.
I had just come back from R&R in Singapore, and the lieutenant knew that I was short, meaning I only had a few weeks left of my tour, and he said, "This is going to be your last," and sure enough, it was. I had led with the other scout 50 Marines up the hill on the DMZ, and all of a sudden it became very quiet, and we knew that that meant that something was going to happen, and sure enough it did. I was the first one shot. I was shot through the chest, and I was thrown to the ground. The other scout came up, covered me up with his body, returned fire. There were a division of NVA holed up in the hills at the rock pile, and there was only 50 of us, so we thought that was pretty good odds until we realized that it turned out that there were 13 Marines killed. They put me in a body bag thinking that I had been killed.
Wow.
And they carried me to the LZ, the landing zone, where the helicopter was. One of the Marines that had carried me heard me groan after he dropped the body bag on the ground, and they unzipped it, and to this day, 50 years later, I can still remember that zip. Threw me out, put me on the helicopter, and I was taken to a MASH unit, or a medical unit.
Yep.
My KIA tag was processed with the other 13 Marines, and 2 Marines went to my mother and father's home and told them that I had been killed in action.
Oh my God.
And what do you think my mother said? No, he's not.
Wow.
She didn't think or believe that the Marines that were bringing that message were correct. And
Wow.
it wasn't until 10 days later that I was able to scribble a note when I was on the USS Repose. I was on the Repose for about 4 or 5 months. Surgeries, skin grafts, Demerol with needles. They didn't have main lines back then. So it was very painful.
Oh my God.
And from then to today, it's been very painful every day, experiencing some kind of a pain.
Still experience physical pain?
Physical pain as well, yeah.
As well as mental pain?
Mental pain as well, because when I came home, it had become very difficult for me to sleep or to rest or to concentrate and get through the day without re-experiencing some of those events.
Some of the events from that day, or just
some of the events from that day.
Okay.
Well, throughout the year, we all know that war is not. It's messy. It's not nice, and everyone, whether you're 19 or whether you're 22, and you're called an old man when you're 22,
right?
Because the average age, I guess, there was 19.
Wow.
So, yeah, when I came home, it was very difficult, both painful, and experiencing night terrors and nightmares as well. So, I got some help. When I went to the VA, I'm originally from Wisconsin, so I went to the VA in Wisconsin, and they didn't want to see me. They didn't want to deal with me. They only wanted to deal with World War II and Korean vets. The youngsters that were coming home, they all called us baby killers, and they didn't want to attend to us. And so the VA was very bad for us back then. Back in 66 and 67. And so I had waited a long time to even talk about it, because being from the Midwest, we're very conservative.
Okay.
So no one ever asked me. No one ever had me write anything down. And so for 10 or 15 years, I was on my own. The Veterans Administration did send me back to school. So it was, I had been in combat for the whole year, been shot, been in the hospitals in and out for 2 years, get out. I got out in May of 68, and then I was supposed to turn that page of my life and just go back to school and act as if nothing ever happened. Yeah. Well, that's very hard to do.
Well, I'm sure it's impossible.
It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's impossible to do.
Yeah.
But everyone at the VA and my family also just thought that I could just put that behind me and just move on with my life. I did go to school at the University of Wisconsin.
Probably because they didn't understand
what
you've been through. Yeah.
They didn't understand what I went through. And I was probably the first one that had come home in that kind of condition where I required so much attention, both for the pain and the surgeries and all that experience, and then the mental part of it with PTSD and not being able to sleep, and then having to study. Now go and study, because you've got a history test tomorrow.
Oh, that's awful.
It was very hard.
Yeah,
it was very hard for me.
So how did you cope, or how have you coped with the physical pain, the mental pain, the people who didn't understand?
Well, the way I was able to cope is my wife supports me very much.
Okay.
So that helps, that I've got the support groups.
Yeah.
I've gotten good help from the VA now, both the hospital and the clinic. The clinic is outstanding. I'd recommend that if any veterans, new and old, for whatever war and whatever age, go get help. The help is there. It's outstanding. It's clean. They want to see you. They want to take care of you. Just go and get that professional help.
Okay.
And I was able to get that and get the medication and get the support and get that. I was able to get a job and keep that for 30 years. My wife and I have been married for 48 years. So, that constant, those support groups, those things that have helped me, and then I get involved. I work 30 years, but now I'm busier than I'll ever, because I'm volunteering for a lot of different things. And I try to help veterans when I see them navigate through the process to get help. So since I had difficulty, I understand where the difficult parts are and get the help as well.
Yeah. And how has your relationships and the help that you received, how has that, so you said it's helped you. Could you identify in what way it helped you?
How did it help me? It helped me be comfortable with the issues that I have to deal with every day.
Yeah.
You know, the pain, the discomfort, making choices, and just becoming involved rather than just sitting around the house and not doing anything. Even though it's very painful, I still get out and volunteer and help other people. And I always say, oh, and I forgot to tell you that after I get thrown out of the body bag, those 4 Marines that had saved my life, carrying me, all were killed in a friendly fire bomb ricochet, and they were all killed. So the focus that I had, being positive about this whole thing as much as I could, is everything I do in honor of those guys. So that seems to be working for me. I don't know that it would work for others, but it seemed to work for me.
Yeah. And you said that you were hesitant, or what I was thinking was, if someone's reluctant to go to the VA, do you have thoughts about that? What would you tell someone who's reluctant to go to the VA?
Well, I've counseled veterans who have been reluctant to do that, and I just tell them they can't afford not to.
I see.
You know, there's help. They can give you the help. You can get a good night's sleep. You got to go get some counseling, get some medical help, and I can even go up to the VA with them and get them through comp and pen and get them through the process. So it's worked.
Okay. Well, great. I'm very thankful that you were here today. It's amazing that you are and that you're continuing to help, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for joining us.